Today I will be reading out 50 common questions you guys have sent me and answering them. Which hero do you think is the best to learn fundamentals of the game? It's a good question. I think that heroes without forgiving movement and without forgiving abilities are very helpful to learn the fundamentals of the game. So characters like Ana, Zen, Soldier, Cassidy, Zarya for example are very good. They don't have get out of jail free cards abilities. You need to have good positioning and good understanding and read of the game in order to actually be good at them. If you could design a hero's kit, what would it look like? It's a very interesting question and a tough one to answer because Overwatch is a very unique game. But what I would like to see is a hero that could attach to an ally and use his abilities from within the ally to help him win 1v1s, take duels, take space around the map. How do you know when to time engagements on flanking characters? Sometimes the answer is situational, but as a basic rule of thumb, wait for your team to make contact with the enemy team. Because if the enemy team is not busy with something and they can just look at you, they'll be able to force you out and shut you down immediately. How do you outperform an enemy team with full comms if your team has none? That question is very theoretical because in practice, most of the time, your team is not really communicating. Of course, full communication is better than no communication, but the problem with the vast majority of the players is they don't know how to give proper communication. For example, if the right call is to go left, meta rank players will simply say go right. So your communication could actually make the situation worse rather than benefit. So the way I would advise to approach communication is simply say basic things and not order people around. Cassidy is low HP, Tracer is behind, Tank has no shield, they use Lucio ulti. Stuff like that. Give general information and let your teammates do something with it. Because there's no nice way for me to say this. You do not know much better than your teammates. Therefore, you cannot tell them what to do because you simply do not know any better. So focus on yourself. How can the devs change Lifeweaver to make him more viable in higher ranks? I could not tell you specifically, but I know one thing. In order to make a hero as viable as possible, they need to have damage or at the very least offensive utility, like Ana's Nate for example. Defensive utilities and no damage makes it nearly impossible to carry games. What I would do is either amp up his damage to be more consistent or change his utility to be more offensive. What do you think of 5v5 versus 6v6 and what do you prefer? Even before Overwatch 2 was announced, I used to have a video called How to Fix Overwatch. And the first thing that I said that the game needs to be 5-on-5. And to my surprise, a year later after the video, Overwatch 2 was announced and they said it's gonna be 5-on-5. Now, I'm a big advocate for 5-on-5. I don't like 6v6. I think that a lot of players enjoy 6v6 because, well, they just like it. It's a preference thing. But the game in Overwatch 1 was not that great, even when it was consistently updated. That was before there were so many characters in the game. Since they started adding up a lot of characters, it became nearly impossible to balance 6v6 or find it enjoyable. You would pick a bunch of characters, there would be so much on the screen going on, you would not know what to do. As a viewer, it was impossible to watch. As a new player, it was impossible to understand. So therefore, I think that 5v5 overall as a format is a lot easier. Now, I do think there's a lot of flaws with the 5v5 format, but not as in of itself. I think that the hero balance plays a huge part, like how much damage, how much HP characters have, play into the fun of the game, but I prefer 5v5 in general and I think it should stay that way. Who do you believe is the hardest or easiest hero from each role? So when I say easiest, I mean easiest to get value out of without skill. On support, for me it's Moira. On DPS, it's a very tough choice, but I would say something between Echo, Soldier and Hanzo. Now why Echo? Because it is a difficult character after all, it's fairly mechanically demanding. But from what I've noticed in meta rank is that people have a very difficult time fighting against flying heroes that take off angles and high ground. For tank, it's Mauga. You stand, you shoot, don't have much to worry about, that's it. How much do outside activities like exercise, sleep or eating right help with your in-game Overwatch ability? I think you're approaching the game wrong. Why do you need to exercise, sleep or eat right to enhance your Overwatch ability? You need it to enhance your life ability. Now, it does enhance the Overwatch ability by having better mental clarity and actually think about things that you want to improve in your gameplay. But the question is so fundamentally flawed that I think you're focusing on the wrong things. What did you learn from your time in Overwatch Pro League? I think what you're saying is basically what I learned from my professional gaming career. And simply, to be professional, the importance of being likable, the importance of being good to your teammates, the importance of respecting your coach, to show up on time, be self-accountable. If you want to get something, you have to work hard, like winning a championship, and nothing comes easy. If you were to rework Mercy, how would you do it? Because I don't like to talk out of my ass, I'm not going to be answering that question in detail because I simply do not know. But Mercy suffers from lack of damage, it's that simple. And her damage amplification only works when your teammates are competent. And the only way to ensure that is to play with a duo. So Mercy is very, very good when you have a strong DPS duo, but with randoms, not so great. So if I had to change her, I would probably do something to enhance her movement and also the pistol in the Valkyrie. Any advice on improving my accuracy? Yes, play the game, be proactive, constantly challenge yourself, seek out duels. Also on the side you can play codes in-game like Vaxta for example. Which season in Overwatch 2 was the most fun to play in? Probably season 1 because it was the most exciting. As a Zen main, how do you deal with Sombra spawn camping? First thing first, you should be aware that she's actually spawn camping you. As soon as she's out of invisibility, you shoot her. Number 2, use natural cover. It's very difficult to kill a Zen that is standing next to a wall and every time you shoot him, he goes behind that wall. What made you enjoy Overwatch in the first place, considering it's so fundamentally different than most other shooters like CS? So, as most of you know, I used to play Counter-Strike semi-professionally before I came to Overwatch. What made me enjoy Overwatch back in the day is that the characters used to have very high skill ceilings and the gameplay was very, very fast. You need to have what every gamer strives to have. The complete package. Game sense, mechanics, fast thinking, reactions, clutch ability, etc, etc. But as the game progressed and new heroes being added and things change, I feel like that aspect of the game that was really, really fun is starting to fade away a little bit. So in short, what made me enjoy Overwatch is the natural, fast-paced gameplay. The Season 9 changes and how they affected the game are hardly talked about. Do you think they overall changed the game for the good or the worse? I don't like the changes because they made it more difficult to outplay your opponent. More HP means the game is more forgiving to your mistakes and gives you more time to react to a good play that your opponent has made. Should I choose a character I enjoy playing or a character I'm good at? Usually things that you're good at are fun. So the answer would be character you're good at because it's going to be fun to be good. How do you deal with the lever or even worse, throwing teammates? My friend, I wish that the bad things in your life would be throwing teammates and levers. You play to the best of your abilities, finish the game, you on to the next. It's not that big of a deal. Number 1 tip for ADHD to get good at thinking while playing, because for me it's impossible. When you say it's impossible, well of course it will be impossible. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. First of all, say it's possible, I just haven't figured out how. A good tip I would say is speaking out loud. What you're thinking, say it through your mouth, because when you hear it again, it will be much easier to concentrate on what you're supposed to do and your mistakes. Can someone be self-accountable in Overwatch but not be self-accountable in real life? It's a very interesting question because the vast majority of Overwatch professionals look like they don't have their together in real life. Now, in order to be a pro in Overwatch, you have to be self-accountable. But the thing about Overwatch and video games in general is that the self-accountability is very easy. What do I mean by that? Is that you don't really risk anything by becoming better at video games. You're not gonna get punched in the face, you're not gonna get rejected, nobody's gonna laugh at you, nothing will happen. Therefore, you do not learn how to deal with loss, rejection, and what makes winning so sweet. But if I were to answer this question the other way around, is that all of the self-accountable people that I meet in real life are also self-accountable in Overwatch. And the vast majority of gamers don't have enough self-accountability in real life. How to get girls as an Overwatch player? Become a competent person. Playing Overwatch is only cool when you're cool. What can you do against a really good Widowmaker that is dominating the lobby? Don't tunnel vision too much into Widowmaker, but try to make her life difficult. If you notice that she's caring, shoot at her, distract her, force her to move. What was your favorite era meta of Overwatch and why? Ironically, I really like Dive, even though it supports worst nightmare because you would just be dead 24/7. Tracer, Genji, Monkey, everyone's just on you. I also like Goats because I used to play Zen and it's my favorite hero and he could dish out a lot of damage. So in short, any meta that you would move around a lot and do a lot of damage. Which character do you think needs the biggest rework? What are the current issues and how would you solve them? There are too many to choose from, but I would probably say Moira. The reason why I say Moira is that she's so easy to play, and you will be able to outplay sometimes Grandmaster players as a gold player on Moira simply because it's so difficult to die because of the self-orb and the fade, and the fact that you get healed while doing damage and it's very easy to do damage on Moira. A gold player can win a 1v1 against a GM Tracer. That should not be something that is in the game. Best skin? What is the best thing to do if your teammates are generally slowing you down? Sure, this won't happen every game you play, but is there something to do for when it does happen? Yes, you play to the best of your abilities, and if you lose because of your team, just say, what could have I done better? Because it's the only thing that is going to help you improve. Outside of that, don't get mad, move on with your life, queue again, and I promise you, in the next game, the enemy team is going to be throwing, the tank will be inting, and your team will be good. Do you think any hero should be removed from the game? I would love to see characters that can get a lot of value by playing poorly removed from the game. I know they might be your favorite heroes, but Moira, Brigitte, Mauga, characters like that I'd like to see either reworked or completely deleted from the game. What do you think about projectile and short-range DPS heroes like Sim, Junkrat, Reaper, etc. facing off against Pharah? Should it not be their job to handle Pharah? Well, first of all, if you're playing these characters and you're trying to fight a Pharah, you're playing the game fundamentally wrong. Now, in a 1v1, a Pharah will beat you, but the game is 5v5. You should find picks anywhere else. Now, sometimes the Pharah will make a mistake, which you can capitalize. For example, Pharah all of a sudden is on the ground in front of you when you're playing Junkrat. Yeah, of course, go for the kill. But when the Pharah is shooting your team out of the sky, you should be shooting the Pharah's team out of the ground. Do you think that Mercy is a character that can hit GM without stacking? Currently, I'm doing a rank 2 GM on Mercy. My rank is Masters 5 at the moment, almost Masters 4, and I can tell you it's definitely possible. But I can tell you that it's significantly more difficult than any other character that can do damage. So the answer is yes. What are some valuable lessons you have learned from Overwatch that can translate to real life? Thank you for all the great content. First of all, thank you for the kind words. What I have learned is that if you can be the 1% in a game like Overwatch, you can be the 1% of anything else. Overwatch is very difficult. It requires a lot of hard work, requires a lot of mechanical abilities, requires a decent amount of intelligence, an ability to spot mistakes from you, your team, self-accountability. So I came to realize that if I can be good in video games, I can be good at anything that I put my mind to. Can you make it to GM with good aim and not very good game sense? Not very likely. That's why cheaters are mostly stuck in middle ranks. Do you prefer the current rank system or one from Overwatch 1? I prefer the number system of Overwatch 1 because it was easier to measure how much progress you make in comparison to other people. Which hero from each role do you think has the highest skill ceiling? On DPS, Tracer Genji. Mechanical abilities, movement, game sense. On tank, it would probably be Bo and Winston. They require good mechanical abilities, they require good positioning, and most importantly, they require good timing. On support, I would say Ana and Lucio. With Ana, you don't really have any movement abilities, you need to have top-notch positioning and really difficult cooldowns to land. Lucio has a very high skill ceiling. His movement is very difficult to master, his shots are very difficult to hit, and you need to have a good understanding of when you should engage enemies by themselves, when you should be with your team, when should you be with your tank. What stats should you pay attention to on your profile? The stats that you should pay attention to are deaths per 10 and damage per 10. Most definitely not accuracy. Hey Awkward, what is the difference between opening up the angle and creating an off angle? Opening up the angle is basically means peeking wide. Peek to the point that you can see the enemy so you can shoot them. Most players play so scared and they're afraid to peek in order to get kills because they're too afraid to die. And an off angle is basically creating another point of pressure. If your team is on the right of the payload, it can be on the left side of the payload. If your team is on the low ground, it can be on the high ground. That is an off angle. How do you create an off angle without being isolated and killable target? Learn when to disengage. It's not a do or die. You go there, try to get a kill, it doesn't work out, get out. Should I practice learning a new hero in quick play? No, you should be practicing new heroes where the environment is remotely challenging. Competitive people are actually going to try, it's going to be way more difficult and you're going to be playing against players who are around your skill level. Therefore, you will improve at a much faster rate than you would on quick play. Who is your favorite hero to play? Ana and Zenyatta definitely. Good positioning, good rotations, high skill ceiling, high mechanical abilities, fast decision making. Love it. What should I do if I'm playing poorly and my team is yelling at me? The answer is pretty simple. Get good. But to be honest, I even get flamed in meta ranks. People don't know what they're talking about most of the time. So what I would do is focus on myself, improve, and eventually you rise to the ranks and they're gonna get stuck behind. And that is the best way to get revenge on people who are yelling at you. What separates pro players in Overwatch from top 500 ladder players? You can't be a pro player without being a good ranked player, but it's not necessarily that if you're a good ranked player, you will be a pro player. Pro players are basically elite ranked players that can work in the confinement of a team. They're good teammates, they communicate, they play to the team's needs rather than selfishly, to an extent, of course. Are there any tips and tricks for playing faster, more risk-reward heroes like Genji, Doomfist, as I struggle on them more compared to heroes like Zenyatta, Reaper, Zarya, who are more slow and safe during a fight? I find it very interesting that you think that something like Zenyatta is safer than Genji and Doomfist during a fight. There are no tips and tricks. There are only experiences. Every time you struggle, you ask yourself why you struggled. Why did I die? Why did I not get a kill? Answer the question. Figure out the answer to those questions, and you'll be better. Can any person get a high rank with time plus effort, or can people generally be hard-sucked beyond their control? Anyone can be high rank if they put the time and effort. Most people put time, but they don't put effort. Time is not necessarily effort. Effort is actually looking at your mistakes, asking yourself what you could have done better, looking at your replays, looking at other players' play and do a comparison. As long as your skill determines the outcome of a game, it means there's always something you can do about it. Is it possible for someone to hit rank 1 on any hero? Yes, and it has been done before. What are some tips playing against Wrecking Ball when you're playing a vulnerable hero? When you play against Ball, the first thing you should do, when you don't see him, assume he's going to engage. If you're aware of that fact, it will be much more difficult for him to kill you. Second thing, as soon as you know that he's going to engage, find something that he can use as natural cover for him to 1. Either not boop you, or 2. Either not slam you. The second thing that you can do is when you know he's going to engage you, find a wall, trash can, anything you can hide behind that once he tries to engage and boop you or slam you, you can use his cover so he misses abilities. How tanks are fundamentally different from other roles. On DPS and support, uptime is extremely important. On tank, patience is way more important than uptime. You need to be very patient with your cooldowns and your engagements. What are the most common mistakes meta rank players make? The biggest one is being afraid to make mistakes. You need to have high uptime, which will mean more mistakes, but more mistakes is more opportunities to learn. And more opportunities to learn equals improvement. Should I communicate with my team when I play competitive? I already kinda answered it in question number 3. The answer is you can, but give them basic information rather than ordering them around. What hero do you hate most and why? I really hate Lucio, because the fact that he manages to speed an entire team really disorients my gameplay. I think what I would change about Lucio is delete the speed from his teammates and only keep it to himself. How can I become quicker at recognizing situations during the fight and capitalizing off of them? The question is very easy to answer. You're asking how can I be faster? In order to be faster at something, you first have to do that thing slowly. And when you do that thing slowly many times, you build up speed. So essentially it boils down to experience. Do the thing slow, eventually you'll do it fast. How to carry when your tank ints every single fight without fail. It's very interesting because I don't think you're complaining when the enemy tank is throwing. But you know what, I'll answer your question. When your tank is inting, he's creating space for you. When he's creating space for you before he dies, there's something that you can capitalize on. And if you fail to capitalize on that fact, it means it's a skill issue. But if your tank is throwing by jumping off the map, well, just take the loss and move on with your day. Why do you rarely teach playing on your main account? I've answered that question many times before. The reason why I don't teach playing on my main account is because the average player will not be able to comprehend what happens. The game is incredibly fast in my rank, and by the time I'm trying to explain one point, it moved to 5 different other points. Why I prefer playing in lower elo while explaining? Because it's much easier to see what mistakes the enemies are making, how I capitalize on them, and sometimes I can even stop and talk and show while I'm playing, which is something that is essentially impossible at higher elos. If you have made it this far, you're probably a dedicated player who would like to improve and rank up. Let me tell you about Rank Up Academy, which is a monthly coaching service that will grant you personalized feedback, access to hundreds of interactive and recorded classes, and a community of like-minded players, including pugs, tournaments, and much more. In this video, I gave you answers to your specific questions, but what is important for me is not necessarily to look at the hyper-specific answer, but rather look at the common approach with every answer I gave you. Because improving at anything starts with your mindset and your approach, rather than seeking tips and tricks. I wish you guys a great rest of the day, or great rest of the night, depends where you're from, and be prepared for more videos. And by extension, I can tell you it's significantly more difficult than any other character that can do that. And I can tell you Tiffy, why can't I speak properly? What am I, dumb?